Thanks for tuning into the Product Operations Summit. We really hope you're enjoying the event so far, as there's even more to come. All sessions are designed to be interactive and to give you the chance to engage with our panelists and speakers, so come ready to get involved with your questions and comments. For access to even more exclusive Product Ops content, check out PLA membership plans at productledalliance.com. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the next session.
Hi everybody, my name is Ashley and I am so excited to be here with you today. Thank you so much for joining me as we discuss the differences between product managers, program managers, and product operations managers. But more importantly, we're going to talk about how all three of these roles can actually work really well together. So I'm really excited to talk about this with you and share more about my insights and hear from you as well. But before we do that, let me share a little more about myself. As I mentioned, my name is Ashley. I'm based out of Austin, Texas, and I am currently a product operations manager with Twilio. But before I became a product operations manager, I was actually a program manager and later a product manager for Indeed.com. So I definitely understand how it can be confusing to know the differences between these roles, but I have the unique view from my experiences on how these differ and how you can work well together. So that's what we're here to talk about today, and I hope you're as excited as I am about it. So with that, let's get right into it. How do these roles, or what do these roles do? So before we launch into this, I do want to make a few caveats. Each role differs depending on the company. Where a company is in terms of its life cycle, if it's a startup, if it's in its growth phase, if it's a mature company, that makes a difference on the nature of these roles. For example, a product manager in a startup may have much more responsibility than they might in a mature organization, where some of the responsibilities are more broken out because the company has scaled so much. Also, a product operations manager may differ greatly depending on the company as well. Some companies are very focused on the actual operations piece and data analytics piece of product operations, and so that role can be very focused on that piece. Whereas other companies accept that piece, but also use a little bit more of the strategic planning and other aspects of product operations, and we'll get into that. But I just want to make sure that it's clear that your company may differ in what I'm going to share. And these are just general ideas of what different roles do in a typical company. But again, it might differ depending on what your company needs. So with that, let's get started. We'll start with product managers. Product managers have a huge responsibility. They have to make sure that they get the right product to the right person at the right time. That is a lot to get right. So that means that often you'll see product managers have a lot on their plate because not only are they talking to customers to understand their experiences with their product, they're also looking at market data to understand what the trends are in their specific product area. They're working with go-to-market teams to understand what customers are saying through them. And they're just using all of these different sources of information to make strategic decisions about how their product is being managed. So what that boils down to is they understand customer needs and the problems that they need to solve. And then they create a cohesive vision and a product roadmap that they can share internally and sometimes externally so that others understand what's coming up next. And what's coming up next is the feature that will delight customers, especially for outcome-focused product companies. So as a product manager, you need to be able to do user research and market research to some extent, have a strategic mindset and be able to prioritize against a lot of different data points and conflicting needs. And you need to be analytical. You need to know the metrics behind your product and why they're important and what they indicate for what your users might need next. Next up, we'll talk about program managers. Oftentimes you'll hear that program managers are cat hurdlers. They get all the cats together, they wrangle them up, and make sure that they're all working on the same thing. And really what this means is that program managers have a much broader focus than product does. They are focused on cross-collaborative initiatives that are important for company goals. Depending on the company, program managers are usually responsible for the scope and the timelines, but sometimes they're also responsible for the actual teams working on a program and the budget. And the most important thing that a program manager can do is communicate the status of the program to all of the stakeholders involved. So what this means is that programs also have a lot of important things they need to be able to do. First of all, they need to be able to facilitate discussions and handle conflict. They need to be able to influence without authority. Oftentimes, they don't actually have authority over the teams that they're working with, but they need to make sure those teams are working together towards a common goal, and they're not blocked. They also need to be able to do risk management and escalation. Every program or project is going to have risks, and you need to be able to understand how to identify those risks and how you're going to manage them and who's going to manage them as well. And finally, program managers need to be excellent communicators, and they also need to be metrics driven. They have to know what are the key indicators that measure success or failure for their programs. That way they are able to effectively communicate that out to stakeholders, especially when it comes to risk management. One important distinction I'd like to make is between program managers and project managers. Program managers are really responsible for an overall program. And what that means is that a program has multiple smaller projects within it. Sometimes they are happening in parallel. Other times they have dependencies on each other, or there might be a mixture. But regardless of how the program is structured, the program manager is responsible for overseeing the success of that entire structure. Meanwhile, project managers are usually assigned to one or at most two projects that might live under a program. So they may report up to the program manager in terms of making sure that the project is on time and on budget and on schedule, and that it's being managed effectively. So they might have different things that they need to report on, but ultimately it comes under the umbrella of the program manager. Now let's talk about product operations managers. They're a newer kind of role, and I like to explain as strategic thought partners. They make sure that not only the product team, but other teams impacted by the product team are being successful and efficient. So what this really comes down to is three core things. First, product operations managers are usually responsible for defining the strategic planning process within their company, specifically around the product portfolio. This can mean annual planning, quarterly planning, whether or not you use OKRs, whatever the process is, they define that and they also execute on it. So they make sure that all of the right parties are involved, all of the right cross-functional stakeholders are aware of all the plans that are being developed by the product team. They also serve as a liaison between product managers and go-to-market teams. So as a product manager is building towards something new and beginning to get ready for launch, the product operations manager helps make sure that those go-to-market teams, such as sales or support, know what's coming and know what they need to do to support it and how it impacts them and why it matters. Finally, product operations managers are really focused on operational excellence, specifically for the product team. And this can mean a number of things. It can be product process improvements, helping with specific reviews or specific frameworks that a product manager might use. But ultimately, they're making sure the product team is working effectively. So a product operation manager needs to have thought partnership skills and relationship building skills. They have to be an excellent cross-functional collaborator, and they have to be great at stakeholder management, and they need to be driven by efficiency and data. Now, one thing I want to make sure is clear, because this is often seen as a misconception. Product operation managers are not project managers. They're not responsible for managing individual projects. They're not really focused on that. They might do some project management. They may even do some program management. They may even do some process management, but that's not their role. They are strategic. They are thinking through the consequences of what a product manager is working on and making sure that not only are they working on that effectively, but the downstream teams and stakeholders and customers understand the impact of that. And again, this might vary by your organization. Some product operations managers are very focused on data. They run voice of customer programs, etc. But ultimately, they're that strategic partner for the product team. So with that, let's talk a little more about how these roles can work together, and I have a really exciting example that we can talk about. Before we get into the example, let's just take a step back and look at the product development lifecycle. This is a very simplified view from my perspective. Your organization may do this a little bit differently, but generally this is how most products go through their general launch. So first, there's a strategic planning phase. And this is where you are using data from your customers and from the market to understand where you need to focus next. What's your next big rock that you want to tackle? What's your next biggest OKR, etc. From there, once you understand your key focus areas for the quarter or the year, depending on your process, you move into designing and building new products or features that appeal to those core focuses. So you understand how you're going to build a solution and how you're going to do it on time. Timing is everything when it comes to fast-paced technology and software development. Next, you figure out how you're going to test it. How do we know which products actually are showing customer value? So this could be through pilot programs or beta programs, voice of customer programs, whatever makes the most sense for your team. It could also just be internal testing. So making sure from an engineering perspective that your products meet security standards, they are scalable, they are priced right, etc. Finally, you get to the most exciting part, which is launching. And this means making the product available to the market. Before you do that, making sure that the market and your internal stakeholders are ready for this product or feature. So with that, let's talk about an example. So allow me to introduce my wonderful dog, Mr. O's. He's a pandemic puppy, and he has learned all about the joy of toys that are delivered in boxes. And he has decided that he wants to launch an app. He actually has an app that is going international. So all the dogs around the world, big and small, have access to all the best dog toys that they can choose from. However, because he's going international, he needs to scale. He can't do everything by himself. He needs to have the right strategic resources that can help him with planning, with managing his projects, with launching, etc. So he's brought his neighbor dogs on the team. First up is Sir Wiggins. He is the product operations manager for Mr. Rose's dog toy app. And Waffles. She is the program manager responsible and really probably the key leader behind Mr. Rose and Sir Wiggins. So let's just go through the product development lifecycle and talk about how this could work in this example. First up is strategic planning, and this results in a prioritized, measurable product portfolio. So the product operations manager, Sir Wiggins, is responsible for creating the quarterly and annual planning process. He helps understand how are we going to plan and what's our cadence and what's the right format for us to keep track of all the products and features that we're going to launch, either this quarter or this year. The product manager is responsible for understanding what's happening with customers in the market as an input into this quarterly or annual planning process. And finally, the program manager is responsible for identifying the right resources to allocate against those plans. So once Mr. Rose has identified some of the top things that he wants to work against, the program manager can help make sure that the right resources are aligned against those top goals. So as an outcome of these various steps that these three teammates have done, Mr. Rose has said that the top priority, since we're going international, is we need to have a way to respond to GDPR requests. And I'm sure many of us are familiar with GDPR at this point, but essentially this is a European requirement to make sure that customers are able to request their data from companies and request that the company deletes that data and have an understanding of how the data is being used in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it, but that's generally how we can conceptualize that. So now that we know that we're going to work on making sure we implement privacy features related to GDPR, we're going to move into the designing and building phase. And this results in an incrementally shippable product. And what does that mean? That essentially means that something that we can eventually take to the market. And we can test it and iterate upon it as we need to. So the product operations manager is responsible for helping to establish standardized processes that the product manager can use as they're working through this phase. That might mean the product requirements document, or PRD, any reviews that need to take place with cross-functional stakeholders like design reviews or security reviews or legal reviews, etc., or anything else that helps make the product manager focused and able to execute successfully. The product manager manages those requirements and makes sure that they're clear to engineers. And then they also manage their product roadmap so that the go-to-market teams and any other internal teams know what's coming up next. And finally, the program manager is helping to manage the timeline and the risk and the budget related to actually building this. Now, again, this might differ depending on your company, but if you're a technical program manager working with engineers, you're helping them actually execute against the requirements in the plan. So at the end of this, the program manager has said that the engineering team is all set. We have a way for customers to request their data and request that we delete their data, and we're able to do that successfully. Now we move into testing. And this is where we actually get to interact with customers and make sure that we are meeting their needs and requirements. So this is where product operation managers might split. Product operations managers sometimes manage the pilot and beta programs. They might help analyze the data that comes out of pilots and betas. They might do something entirely differently and actually help user research understand what customers are doing and how they're interacting with products. It all depends, but ultimately what it boils down to is that the product manager is helping with qualitative and quantitative analysis. Meanwhile, the product manager is using that analysis to make sure that there is a product market fit. And basically, that means that we are meeting the needs of the users. And finally, the program manager, if any bugs or risks come up, they help manage those as well. So at the end of this phase, the product operations manager and product manager have identified that the pilot and beta testers are satisfied. There's no bugs, and so we are ready to go. Finally, we actually launch. And this means first that we make sure that internally we're ready, and externally we are ready for the readiness or for the launch of this product. So this is where product operations is really key. They are making sure that product is clearly communicating internally with go-to-market teams and also other teams as well, product marketing, legal, privacy, etc., making sure that all those teams know what's coming and how it impacts them. They also help teams that actually send communications to customers know what's coming up next and how they can communicate that with the customers. The product manager oftentimes works with the product marketing manager to do market positioning and strategy, just to make sure that the market is ready for the product and that they're clearly communicating to the market what the story is. Why did we build the GDPR product? Why are we doing this launch? Finally, the program manager helps with the technical aspects of launch. So they make sure that on the technical side, engineering is ready to feasibly make this product available. At the end, the product operations manager confirms that everyone is aligned, we know it's being launched, we know when it's being launched, why it's being launched, and how it impacts me. So as you can see, every role has a very unique and valuable focus. Product is really focused on the outcomes of their product. They need to know their users, they need to know the market, they need to know what the features are. And they need to be able to prioritize their product roadmap and use success metrics such as NPS, churn, etc., anything metrics related to their actual product to decide the next steps. Program managers are focused on broader initiatives or programs that are tied to company goals. It may not be specifically tied to any particular product. And they are responsible for having a roadmap for how those programs are going to be completed. So they're more focused on ROI and then the budget and timeline and anything related to their specific program. Product operations managers are focused on making product managers efficient. They drive the product portfolio and make sure that the product team has whatever they need to perform effectively and drive the adoption of new products and any other internal KPIs that are relevant. So I want to restate again that not every company is structured like this. The roles may vary greatly depending on what your company is working on and where they are in the market. But generally, you can see that by collaborating and working together, these different roles can actually achieve a lot. Mr. Rose alone could not achieve GDPR compliance for his app on his own. It wouldn't be possible. There were so many steps, so much planning, so much execution, so much readiness that had to go into actually making this successful. And that's really where program and product operations managers can work well with product. So to close, I just want to reiterate the point that good product outcomes for your customers come down to good collaboration. So as you scale and as you take more responsibility and distribute it so that one person is not so responsible for so much, you'll be able to actually ensure that you are successful. Thank you so much. I hope this was helpful, and I am looking forward to any questions you might have. If you want to, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I've included my email and LinkedIn here. And I really enjoyed sharing this information with you and my own experiences with how program managers, product ops managers, and product managers differ and how they can work together. Thank you so much.